Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Love, Laughs, and Lessons. And we have another awesome guest here today. And this is Let's Talk About Sex series. I'm Dr. Frankie, and Denise Ray is my co host who will introduce our amazing guest.
Yeah. Hello, hello. I'm Denise Ray, as Dr. Frankie just told you.
So cute.
Sally Holden is a transformational mindset coach, professional kinesiology practitioner, and number one Amazon best-selling author of Thrive and A Joyful Life. Over the past 14 years, she's helped thousands of women overcome burnout, rediscover their joy, and create lives filled with energy and purpose. Sally's story is incredibly inspiring. After navigating the challenges of divorce and personal loss, she found herself on a journey of self-discovery that led her to reclaim her self-worth and reconnect with her sexual confidence. By shedding societal expectations and embracing authenticity, Sally has not only transformed her own life, but now helps others do the same, building deeper relationships, embracing vulnerability, and creating more fulfilling connections. I cannot wait to dive into Sally's journey and hear your insights on reclaiming sexual confidence, removing masks, and living authentic.
That is a tongue twister.
No, wait, I'm gonna do this
It
authentically.
I love
Because where was I
it.
trying to take the word, right? And
Authenticity, I think.
yes, right. But I wanted to say authentically in intimacy and relationships. So please join me and my twisted tongue in welcoming Sally Holden. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks so much, Denise. What a beautiful welcome, and so wonderful to be here with Dr. Frankie and Denise and everybody that's listening as well.
So, do you go by Sally or Sal?
I prefer Sal. My full name is Sally, but yeah, definitely prefer Sal.
All
Yeah,
right. Well, then we're going to
much more
call you
catchy.
Sal.
Sal, you are. That's
Because I
right.
know what that's like. My legal name's Francine, and I don't vibe with that name at all. So I go by Frankie. So I get it.
And I won't
Love
even tell
that.
you what my legal name is, and we'll just say Denise, and we'll just leave it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And please, nobody call me by my legal name because I cringe. Anyway. So, Sal, tell us a little bit about how you do what you do.
Yeah, look, honestly, it's been a really big journey. As Denise had mentioned, I went through, navigated some really challenging life situations where I was navigating divorce. There was a really difficult, unhealthy relationship for 14 years, which was from 16 to 31, predominantly. So very formative years as well, where I was really obviously trying to develop self-esteem and confidence in my beingness and discover who I was and really essentially lost myself along the way. And along with that, and then my mum passed away shortly afterwards. And it really had me have that line in the sand moment. And it was predominantly because of my girls that were aged 6 and 8 years old at the time, where I was just like, my God, I have to change. I have to really do something here to shift things because I don't want to be this angry, sad, resentful mum growing up, or raising my girls and everything. So that was really what got me on the path of self-development. I kind of dabbled in it, but it was like the moment that all of that happened, it was like this moment of real intense change and deciding for myself to shift things. So
Uh-oh.
that was when I
Losing.
started studying kinesiology and how we think. Sorry,
No worries, you're
am I
back.
still
We're
there?
here.
Perfect. uh, so all the ways that that our mindset and the way that we speak to ourselves really can impact our well-being. And so that really led me into then mindset and transformational coaching as well. So that was quite a long time, and I've continued to learn and grow along the way and discover more and more things about myself and about life. And it's a joy to be able to share what's supported me or helped me. And obviously everybody's journey is different and different tools will work for different people, but just sharing this really worked for me, or that was really great, or this was or really helped me shift has been really instrumental in my journey. Mm.
Great. So it, what's a tool that has really worked for you in accessing your vulnerability? and showing up authentically?
Mm.
What's something you can share that's been really meaningful, if it's a tool or if it's a mindset or so on?
I think the biggest shift overall, so like the biggest mindset shift was like self-love, because I really feel that unless we've got that strong foundation, certainly this was my journey, I was terrified to actually be vulnerable, to feel exposed, or to allow myself to open up to others in a way that they could reject me. And so by building that sense of self-love, first and foremost for myself, I was my own safety net. So it allowed me to have the courage to really open up, to be more vulnerable, to be more authentic. And I was thinking even just, with our intro and chatting about our names, and even just really deciding like what actually feels like more authentically me in the name that I choose for myself is really important as well. And so all of those things, for me personally, one of the biggest tools that's really supported me to have deeper levels of self-love is actually the Byron Katie work. I don't know if you're familiar with Byron Katie, but I have used that process. Like when I was first introduced to it, I resisted it for 6 months. My ego did not want to look at that. It was like, no, we are not doing that. And once I finally dived into it and really understood the power of challenging the beliefs and thoughts and all the projections and misunderstandings that we've taken on, or even as a young child, and or have been projected onto us by others that haven't healed their wounds, all of those things just really started to help peel back those layers in being able to really love and value myself at a deeper level, and to realize how much I was also projecting onto others in needing their love, needing their appreciation, needing them to respect me, when that was my actual internal work. So that's been really like such a significant part of my journey. And it's a tool that I continually teach all of my clients and anybody I can share it with, because
Yeah.
I just think it's such valuable work. Mm.
And is that radical? Is Byron Katie radical acceptance and kind of allowing people to be who they are and accept who they are and not try to change them? Is that?
I think like for me personally, it's been about like getting in touch with you deep up, whether you want to call it heart or soul or inner wisdom, and moving out of what I call like the ego survival mind. So for me, like that ego survival mind will hold on to constructs and concepts that was once pro survival, but is now no longer resourceful. So things that, we've thought we needed to be more perfect or good enough or stronger or thinner or prettier, or like all of those ego concepts, which actually aren't the most authentic self. It's just all the projections or all the ways that we've tried to figure out the rules of the game in order to be loved, valued, and belonging within our birth family first and foremost, but within society as well. So it is definitely like a radical acceptance for sure, because fighting what is only causes us pain. And it's also a deepening of actually loving what is. And I mean, that's the name of her book. And it's so exactly that. It's just like being at peace with what is, and realizing that it's never the event or it's never the situation that we're telling ourselves. It's the story, it's the meaning that we've created around that about ourselves.
Yeah. I think too with Byron Katie, back when she was doing what I think the book was called The Work, the thing that I took away from that was that it's not your responsibility to love me, it's mine. Right. So that's like in my bathroom, I have it up, you know. So when you talk about self-love, really taking it back to not looking outside of ourselves to feel complete, and we talk about this all the time, but
Mm,
looking within to know that we are complete already.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Like not looking
absolutely.
externally for somebody to
Yes,
complete us.
that's right. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And it's always like well, certainly from my understanding, our ego survival mind that wants to separate and divide, because that's what gives us our sense of individuality to begin with. However, when we really buy into that concept, and a lot of the work I do is with women that are feeling exhausted and burnt out, that's
Mhm.
when our ego survival mind becomes so loud, and that inner critic gets super, super loud as well. So the more exhausted and the more depleted we are, the louder that gets, and the more critical we become of ourselves and of others as well. So I think it's so helpful for people to understand that yeah, the more exhausted and depleted, the harder it is to connect back to that sense of wholeness within ourselves, or the love within our heart. Yeah.
So what's the distinction? Like it's important for us to express our wants and our needs in relationship.
Mm.
Where it gets confusing, I think, for folks is like, where do you accept that person and accept your wants and needs and figure out, okay, how am I going to get my needs met without expecting this other
Mm.
person to change and accommodate me to fulfill my needs?
Mm. I really love what Till Swan has to say around this in terms of like really understanding incompatibility, because this is where we often cause so much pain in to each other in relationships. Because it's, say if one person absolutely loves travel and the other person loves to stay at home, that's going to be an ongoing conflict, and both people have to either severely compromised, which may be okay for themselves, or that may be something that might be okay, but it may not be okay for them within their relationship. And I mean, that's a decision that all people have to come to terms with: is this okay if I forego this part of myself, or is this part of me so important to me that I'm living this and expressing this that it actually is incompatible for me to remain with this other person. But where it gets twisted is, I believe, we turn it on the other person and say, well, if you really love me, you'd come and travel, or if you really love me, you wouldn't leave me, you wouldn't go travel, and you'd want to stay at home with me. And I think that's where, again, we personalize and we make it mean something other than what it actually really is within that. So I think the more compatible, the more we can meet somebody that, a it's actually synergistic for them to actually provide that need for us. If somebody loves to hug and loves to give massages, and you love to receive hugs and love to receive massages, that's a compatible fit. Or it might be vice versa, that both parties love physical touch. But if one person does not like physical touch, that's not how they express love, it's not how they like to receive love, that could be a core wound or a core trigger for them. Then somebody that desperately needs that as part of their need to feel fulfilled. And of course, we can do all sorts of things around that, and or we may be able to get those needs met through friendships or through other loved ones, in terms of hugs or going and getting massages. But again, it's really understanding, is this person compatible with being able to meet my needs in a synergistic way that helps us both thrive as our most authentic self. And I love the analogy of, I often share this with my clients, it's like going to a hardware store and trying to buy bread and milk, but taking it really personal that the hardware store, can't supply the bread and milk. We're literally going to the wrong place. And I think when we've had really challenging childhoods and we've grown up in situations where we couldn't get our needs met, often we will end up in situations or take ourselves, to be able to grow through that wound, or to learn more about ourselves as well. So, yeah, I think it's a really big one for so many people, and there's so much misunderstanding around it. Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize too that you're not going to find somebody who's 100% compatible with you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's always going to be shifts and changes. Yeah, it's just,
Mhm.
is this detrimental to me? Is the incompatibility detrimental to me or the other person? Because if we truly love that other person, we don't want them in a detrimental situation either. Yeah.
hmm So, like you mentioned something that's really important for folks to take in, which is that we can't look at our partner for everything. Like, we've got to have a support system outside of our relationship, our primary relationship, friends, family, activities, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really healthy way of interacting. And again, it increases our support system, and because otherwise it places so much pressure on that one particular person. And if that one particular person is struggling in their own life for whatever reason, personally, or when we've based our whole well-being on that one sole person, that can feel a little scary as well. So yeah. And then we move into, if we're feeling fearful and scared, then we can often move into unconscious ways of trying to control or manipulate. And yeah, it is very scary ground, I think, to move into that.
It's also a lot of pressure, right? For one person to fulfill your every need.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Oh, so overwhelming. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm.
Like, I'm just thinking, how does this tie into intimacy and sex? Because this is, our series on sex. And I know that many of us grew up in a pretty restricted, constricted environment when it comes
Mm.
to desire, sexual desire, and how to, sensuality, sexuality, and all of that. And it's a topic that I know people are really hungry to learn more about, to figure out
Mm.
how they can evolve in that area. So what are your thoughts? Anything that comes up around that?
Yeah, I think just going back to what we were saying before, by like if we're relying on that one person to meet our every need and that person hasn't got capacity, maybe they're exhausted or tired or whatever, often those things can lead to resentment. And I think resentment is one of the biggest things that can get in the way of like intimacy and connection and understanding and all of those different pieces that are so important when we're relating with others as well. And I think the really important thing there is communication and really understanding where the other person's coming from, because again, it's the emotional safety first and foremost, particularly for women. I know that that's a little bit different, or from my understanding. I'm obviously not a male, so I can't comment specifically from that perspective. But for women, I know that that emotional safety is one of the most important pieces. But also coming back to boundary setting as well, and really understanding who we are and what feels good for ourselves in terms of being able to communicate and articulate that. I know for myself personally, I've had to do so much work because I had PTSD from past sexual experiences. And I would just freeze, or I would go into the fawn response and I would override my own system again and again and again when things didn't feel good, or I wouldn't speak up, or I wasn't in the headspace to connect on a physical level. And so for me personally, like actually just pausing, just slowing down, really connecting with what actually does feel okay for me in this moment and being able to articulate that. And thankfully, I have a beautiful partner he's helping heal a lot of things within myself. And he's very emotionally attuned and very emotionally present, and has been able to, even when I've not been able to pull myself up, he's like, hey, I'm sensing something's not okay here. So I think having somebody that is really present, is really emotionally attuned, is also very helpful, particularly if somebody has experienced trauma from our sexual experiences as well. So,
Mhm.
It's great you
And
found somebody
yeah,
that is
yes,
able
that's
to do that
amazing.
for you, right?
Yeah,
It's not easy.
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that was after a lot of healing work I did by myself, but there's only so much healing work you can do by yourself as well, like out of
I,
relationship too.
yeah,
Yeah,
I always
because
say that. A
that
lot
stuff's
of
not
it
going
is,
to come up until you're in that
right?
situation.
We're
So,
not getting triggered really by our friends minimally, right? It's in relationship that our
totally brings
emotions,
up that
oh
different.
yeah, it's so
Mm,
much harder. Denise, we're gonna
yeah.
take,
Yeah. So I was going to ask, like, so what are the steps that one that a person could take, right? So say you've come out of maybe a traumatic relationship, you know, and you recognize that this is not where you want to be. You've removed yourself from the situation, but now you want to start, you know, being able to build intimacy again. Are
Mm.
there steps outside of coaching that someone could participate in? Like, what would be the recommendations?
For me personally, and certainly what I'd be sharing with others as well, is really building relationship with self first and foremost again, particularly after a traumatic experience. I think we can end up so fractured from those experiences and have different coping mechanisms that can start coming out, like the fawn response or pleaser response and things like that. So I think it's really important to first and foremost start to do the inner work. For me, I started to question my beliefs. I started to question my beliefs around men and what I believed about men, because I certainly believe in the law of attraction. And what I was finding was I had this very big belief that I can't trust men. And the universe is like, okay, here's some more men you can't trust. So it was like really understanding the correlation of what I believed about myself, what I believed about relationship, what I believed around men, was all very um, combined together to create or to co-create these situations that I was finding myself in. And the more that I did that inner work on all the reasons why I felt like I wasn't lovable, because often when we go through a traumatic experience, we have induced shame as well that we've taken in from those experiences, particularly when somebody's not claimed or recognize the damage that they've done to somebody, or the impact that their behaviors had on somebody. So I think those things are really important as well, to work through that level of shame and to come back to that place of self-love. But self-trust, I think, is a foundational piece, because a lot of the time we say, well, I can't trust this person, or I don't know how to trust people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's fractured in a traumatic experience. And so when we come back to learning that I can trust my ability to be able to discern what's okay for me and what's not. And that starts to come from my ability to be able to set my own boundaries and limits with myself, to recognize what does or doesn't feel good for myself. And that may be as simple as having a milkshake or not having a milkshake. What actually helps me feel good. Like, it can be at such a foundational level. It doesn't have to be going out on dates with people or things like that. Obviously, that can be like next steps. But I think that real first foundational level is doing the inner work on belief systems, on a sense of lovability within ourselves, as well as definitely developing the discernment within ourselves of what does or doesn't feel okay, what lights me up, what doesn't, what do I want to move towards, what makes me feel safe, what doesn't make me feel safe, and really doing a lot of work with ourselves on that first and foremost, because the more intimately we know ourselves, we can communicate that so much easier. If we're not aware of that, we don't know who we are or what we want or what feels good for ourselves. And so many people have grown up with denial and disassociation within their body that have experienced any level of trauma. So that's where we become disconnected from ourselves or disconnected from our body as well. So I think they're all really important steps that people can do literally for themselves in getting to know themselves, and just even journaling and things like that. I think it's really powerful.
And can they work on this on their own, or do they need to be seeing a therapist, coach? Yeah.
I think I think it's all very variable in terms of how much work somebody's already done, like in terms of their level of self-awareness, things like that. I always definitely recommend working with a therapist or a coach, particularly somebody that you really resonate and trust, obviously, is very important, and you feel a deep sense of rapport with, because again, this is we're starting to like reestablish trust within self, trust within relationship, even at a therapist or a coaching level with somebody as well. So but somebody that can support you in noticing the blind spots or helping you become more aware of our patterns, because often we're so unconscious in those patterns, right? Like that's certainly and we can't choose to change it until we become aware. So I believe awareness is 90% of the game, because without that, there is no choice to change. We're just in the pattern and we don't even know it. So, and often understanding that things can be different for ourselves, where again, it's kind of like a fish that's been in a fish tank all its life or in water all its life. How does it know that, there's something different out there if that's all it's ever experienced as well? And I think that can also be that value of a coach or a therapist or somebody that, that person really resonates with and trusts.
I agree. I agree. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a psychologist, and I feel like my whole life I've had therapy, and since the age of 5, and it's definitely so essential. You can take it so far on your own. You certainly can do a ton. There's so many resources out there, and opportunities to grow and stretch ourselves on our own. But at a certain point, I think you can be limited if that's the only way in which you're trying to heal and learn.
Totally agree. Yeah. Those blind spots. I know I've, I still work with people 14 years on as well for that very reason, because it's like, what am I not seeing here? What am I missing? Like, what am I? And again, I do think it is really important to still listen to that intuitive, wise voice within as much as we can, or to work with somebody to help us get more in connection with that as well, because I do believe we all have our own answers. But again, if we've been conditioned to not listen to that, then we need some support in coming back to that.
I mean, we owe it to ourselves, right? Like, life is short, so fast.
Oh, totally. I still share with people, like, I know one of the beliefs that I shifted using the Byron Katie work took me 6 months to shift. And people go, oh my God, that's such a long time. And I'm like, no, living with that belief that was causing me so much pain and suffering for a lifetime is a long time. Like
Good
I've
point.
been 15
Yeah.
years I've been free of that now, and haven't ever had that thought again. But it did take 6 months to shift, but it was so worth the work. So yeah.
Because it impacts everything. I mean, really, everything is interpersonal relationships. That's like without having
Yep.
connection to other.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like we have no reflection of ourselves or who we are, or if we're just literally by ourselves. There's how do we know? Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no relating. Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah. I think we as humans, right, we need to be around others to thrive. And granted, right, there's a range. Some people are really
Mm,
like my daughter is such an introvert. She's like, I don't need to be around other people. I need to know that they're around me, but I don't need to be with them entirely. So, as long as she's around others, that makes her happy.
mm.
Um, so she's with her book in her bedroom, but as long as she knows that there are people in the living room, she's happiest.
She's great. Yeah, yeah.
So
I very much relate to that.
meanwhile, I'm the opposite. I am like I get drained of all my energy by being by myself. So I can only be by myself for so long. And being alone is so important. I've learned that. Like
Mm,
in, your ability to self-reflect, be with your thoughts, be with your feelings, be quiet.
mm, mm.
Otherwise, it can be used as a crutch, an avoidance if you're a people person.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's so many different ways that, it can be either a positive or a negative thing, really, in terms of how it's serving us or what we're using it for. Mm,
Yeah. So
mm.
being brutally honest with yourself, I think we can lie to ourselves. Like we are the biggest liars sometimes to
Yeah.
ourselves.
And sometimes we
Yeah.
don't even know that we're lying,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you
100%.
just buy into that belief, like you said, Sal, that, and it
Mm,
becomes a part of your makeup and who you are. And
mm,
not until something sometimes so excruciating happens that starts to shake up your thoughts and you're wondering, why am I suffering? Like, why am
mm.
I doing this to myself?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing that there are so many ways in which today there's so many people that just have solid ideas and tools and skills to share. Like, because there's just not a one size fits all. So if
Yeah.
it's like when you go and you see a therapist for the first time and you're like, well, this isn't somebody I feel like I can build a rapport with. You
Mm,
got to keep trying to connect with other therapists until you find somebody that you actually can trust, that you do believe can help
mm,
you.
Mhm.
And that's just like all different modalities and treatment approaches and skills and tools that I want to encourage people, if there's something that didn't work for them, to just like keep digging, keep exploring, staying open, being curious. You'll get
mm.
there. You'll find it. Matter of
Uh,
time.
I totally agree with you. And sometimes, I always look at it like the toolkit, right? Like it's like sometimes we need a hammer, sometimes we need a screwdriver. It's like different modalities, different tools. The more that we explore, and again, this is getting to know ourselves, getting to know what authentically works for ourselves as
Mhm.
well, is such an important part of that. And often, going back to your question before, Denise, of somebody's coming out of a traumatic situation, like one of the first things that I did was I just took 12 months to actually explore and experiment and play and discover what did I enjoy. Like I tried so many new things, not only with like different therapies and different tools and crystals and Reiki and all sorts of different
Right.
modalities, as well as and then more psychology books and more woo-woo books and all sorts of different things, and really gave myself permission to explore and to play and to figure out what actually really worked for me. And I think that's a huge part of exactly what you're speaking into as well, Dr. Frankie, is like don't give up if something doesn't feel right, or you've tried something for the first time and it's like, oh, that didn't feel very good. Keep exploring, keep trying, because you
Mhm.
will find eventually those things or those places that really light us up. And I think the more we can be really honest with ourselves as well, and really be true to that, then the more we line ourselves up with more situations, with more people that really do align with our most authentic self. And one thing I would like to share too, because I think it's an important part of that journey, is how scary it can feel in letting go of the non-authentic things. And I certainly know when my marriage was breaking down, that was really terrifying for me, in losing friendships, in losing relationships that actually were no longer a really good fit for who I authentically was, but who I'd actually tried to be for such a long time, to fit in and belong and be accepted. And that was really painful, but it also created a vacuum. It created a space for so many beautiful aligned friendships, relationships, that I could actually be my fullest self. But there was this really scary period of time where it just felt like everything was dropping away, and I felt so scared and so vulnerable in that, and still had the courage to keep moving forward. And I think that's when we've got that foundation of self-love, when we know we've got ourselves first and foremost as our own safety net. It can help in navigating those really challenging, and it causes grief and all sorts of different emotions to come up. We can question ourselves and go into self-doubt and all of those sorts of things as well. But I think it's a core part to becoming more authentic, and the more authentic we are, the more we can really connect deeper on that intimate level.
Yeah, the idea of recognizing you are your closest, bestest friend. It's yourself.
We're going to be with ourselves forever, aren't we? Or as long
And
as we're
really
here.
showing up as
But what
that,
do they
right?
say? You come in alone and you go out alone. It's
Yeah.
you that you got.
Yeah.
And I think a really important piece here is to get to a place where you can actually be on your own, not chasing right? We see a lot of serial monogamy, one relationship after the next relationship after the next relationship. It's like there's no time to actually be with yourself, to explore, to adventure on your own. Like you said, you were out there putting yourself out there, probably putting yourself in uncomfortable, unfamiliar situations, and recognizing, oh, wait a minute, I'm with myself. I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everything will be okay. I don't need
Absolutely.
to throw myself into another relationship because I'm afraid of being alone,
Mm.
going at life alone. Yeah.
Totally. And one of the things I discovered along that pathway was I actually felt way more alone laying beside somebody that I felt so disconnected with. But in truth, I thought it was disconnection with them, but I was actually so disconnected from my most authentic self. And that was what actually really caused the sense of aloneness. And I was very, after a period of time, obviously there was an adjustment and breathing and lots of processing of emotions, but definitely came to that place where it was just like I was by myself, but I never felt alone because I was so there with me. And that was really beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
What a relief, right? When you get to
Yeah.
that place and you're just like, okay, wow, I'm happy alone on my
Mm,
own. I
But
don't
mm,
not
feel lonely.
only. That's
Yeah.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't
yeah.
feel
That's
lonely.
amazing.
Mm, mm,
It is so freeing. I know that I was afraid for a long time to be alone. I was married for
Mhm.
years and then decided that that I needed to make a big decision. And the fear, I just was so terrified to be by myself. But that's when I took my first vacation by myself. And like I said, I'm extroverted. But when you go into an environment like
mm,
you're in a different, I was in a different country. I did it deliberately. And I knew nobody. And I came out feeling so, I mean, like I did it, we did it. Me and
mm.
myself.
So
Made
proud. Yeah.
me feel really proud. Like, yeah, a great success and also a major breakthrough where I never looked back.
Mm.
Now I'm just like, I can be with me.
Mm. I think
So
that's a great first step for people too. Like if they are
Mhm.
facing a fear like that, testing ourselves in, testing's not the right word, but challenging ourselves perhaps in a resourceful way. Uh, yeah, to feel into, oh, what are these feels is such a beautiful way of exploring, yeah, those
then
next steps and building the courage. Yeah.
then you also get to experience what it's like to have people see you alone. Like you don't have
Mm.
your friends to be in conversation with, to look like you've got friends, you're sort of naked standing there and you see how people notice you and don't notice you, right? Like you
Yeah.
see all of it.
Yeah.
But often there will be people who notice you're on your own and will acknowledge that, will come over and introduce themselves, or will, you'll feel that energy of welcomeness.
Mm.
Might be up to you though. You can't be waiting for people to come over to you, right? So it might be the kind of thing is where you assess the environment and you feel like if there's somebody who looks like warm over there and would be receptive and welcoming to just take the risk and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I always used to find that as well. Like I would go to a lot of courses and things like that, and purposely like just reach out to people and meet people. And I always found when I went with somebody else, like I just would not meet the level of people that I normally would when I was by myself. There's and the different conversations. And again, that's another way of exploring, like who do I align with, or what conversations really light me up, or what topics do I love to chat with people about. And finding that sense of alignment is, yeah, really great.
I can hear the introverts out there right now going, yeah, okay, Dr. Frankie, that sounds really easy for you because you're an extrovert. It's so easy for you to approach people. But just because somebody's an extrovert doesn't mean that they're comfortable approaching people and striking up conversation. I'm certainly not. I get very nervous. And even all these years of being in front of cameras and in front of tons of people, I get anxious. I get nervous. I have the same fears that anybody else does that I'm going to be rejected or I'm going to be laughed at or right. You know, you naturally feel those fears. No matter how much I think exposure you have, it's going to come up. You sort of have to override. For me, I kind of push through, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
misconception that somebody who's extroverted has an easy time striking up
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
I
I'm an
found as an
introvert.
introvert. Oh, sorry,
You're an
Jenny.
introvert?
I'm an
See,
introvert.
Yeah,
and you're great
absolutely.
at striking up conversation. You have no problem. From what I can tell from the outside, I'm curious if
Yeah.
you
No,
would
yeah.
agree. Yeah.
I do it because I push myself out. I want to know if I'm going to connect and if I'm going to feel good in this situation. And I would rather push myself to see. And then if it doesn't, then I go back, But I always say there's an opportunity out there. So let me see who this is, what's going on. Do I want to be a part of it? And then I can make a decision, rather than just hiding and not making, and then just being like, totally to myself and not sharing, not learning, not connecting with anyone. So,
So how
yeah.
often does it happen where your biggest, like most of our biggest fears when in situations like that, where you just get the cold shoulder or somebody mocks you or something when you make yourself vulnerable and you approach them and you introduce yourself out of all, I'm sure you put yourself, I know you put yourself in situations that are, right, you're meeting new people, strangers.
Yep, all the
How
time.
often?
Probably once in a blue moon. And just recently, because I do talk a lot. I know it doesn't, can't tell sometimes, but sometimes when I'm out and about, I'll just strike up a conversation with someone just because. And sometimes people are really receptive, and then sometimes they're not. And I'm okay with either. But very rarely does it happen. I went to the movies and it was like right after the movie ended, and there was a group of women and they were together and they had been laughing and blah, blah, blah during the movie. And I said something to them and they kind of looked at me like, what? So I was like, ouch, and literally said, ouch, not being
Oh,
funny, but it just came out because, you know,
I
and then
think that's great.
I kind of thought, like, you know what? That's their business. They're in their bubble, and they didn't want to participate, and I'm okay with that. And went on about my business, and so it won't ever stop me, but it does happen. Sometimes people just aren't receptive to what you're putting out there.
And did you go into the after the ouch as you're walking away feeling like being self-critical?
No, I sent them love. I was like, it was a great movie. I shared something. And I was just like, I'm good. It didn't take anything away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What like not most, some people will
Yes.
walk away being like, ouch. Oh, if I were better looking, if I had
Yes.
approached them saying X, Y, and Z instead, the outcome would have been better. What
All
if
of
I did
that.
this? What if I
Yeah.
did that?
Self-talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, it's not even
Mhm.
that energy, right? It's like, what do you think about that, Sal? Just that process.
Yeah, I just love that. And I think it's just such a beautiful expression of Denise's level of self-love and her courage just to connect with people. And again, not taking it personally, not making it mean, oh, this means I'm not good enough or something about me. Um, and it sounds like cliche, but it's like, how somebody else behaves towards us is so much more about themselves as what it does about ourselves. But again, like during our childhood, like we're so conditioned to take that in and to be looking at that external validation or the non-validation that's coming in and make it mean something about, oh, it means I'm not a good person or I'm not good enough in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's really beautiful when we get to that level, which again allows us to be more vulnerable and to put ourselves out there, because putting ourselves out there is a vulnerable action, I believe, and seeing whether somebody's going to be receptive to us or not. And isn't that beautiful that it's only once in a blue moon? And I have the same or similar experience as well, you, Denise, that it's very few times where you might get the cold shoulder or just a funny look or something like that. And most people, I think, we're hardwired for connection, and most people just love a warm, friendly face or just a way of like connecting and relating to each other. And I think,
It's
what we went,
especially today, right? Like we're
100%,
hungry for that. So
so
take
much.
the risk. And right here's an example. Me too. Like when
Yeah.
people are usually really kind and receptive. It's
Mm,
happened very rarely that someone's given me the cold shoulder. So it's like the likelihood of somebody being rude is
mm,
so small.
mm.
Just go for it.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
especially if it's like for me, I think that when I do speak to people, it is like I'm not thinking about it beforehand. I'm not saying, oh, I'm gonna go speak to her, blah, blah, blah. It just I have something that I want to say to that person or like right in the moment. It's
Mm,
Mm,
not planned. It is like that's just who I am. So I think that if you put yourself out there like that, whatever it is that you want to say or whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't feel as bad because that's who you are. You would have said it whether they said something back or not. You just would have said it's like holding the door open for someone, right? I hold it open because I'm a kind person. I don't hold it open because I want you to say thank you,
mm.
you know,
mm-hmm.
or else I won't hold it.
So like
Yeah.
probably many don't say thank you, would
And
be
they
my guess.
don't.
Because it
Sometimes they
happens to
don't. And
me.
I don't go, thank you. Because I've
Right.
had seen people do that.
It's like, then don't do it.
Then
If
don't do
you're
it. Just
expecting
hold it
a
and then
thank you.
go.
Mm. I love what you share there, Denise, as well, because like that was a real learning curve for me, as well as actually doing things as an expression of my unique self or my most authentic self, rather than doing things with a hooked expectation on behalf of the other person is going to give me appreciation or they're going to give me something out of it, where it feels like, and I think that other people can really feel that. I certainly know I've felt that when I've been on the receiving end of that energy, where it feels like it's given, but with an expectation of something else. And yeah, it's really beautiful. It helped me let go of so much resentment, particularly when I was raising my girls as well as a single mom, and it's so much to do and everything. And it was like, hang on, I want to do these things because of how I'm choosing to show up as a mum, not because my girls expect me to or they need to appreciate me for doing it. It's like, no, this is part of my soul expression of how I want to express myself as a mum. And that just and even with partners and relationships and things like that, it's like, oh, this lights me up to do this or give this to this person because it's me getting to express, and without that person there, I can't express that part of my soul. Yeah,
Mhm.
in a way that feels really fulfilling. So yeah, I really love that. It just lets go of so much expectation and hidden agenda in our behaviors.
Yeah, I like it. So for those who are listening, challenge yourselves. We encourage you to challenge yourselves and, you know, hold the door for somebody or strike up conversation. Not worry about it being a negative outcome and just spread kindness
Yeah.
and connection because we need that.
Yes. And start with yourself.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so
So, Sal,
important.
how can our listeners find you?
Absolutely. I have a Linktree link which is just literally /Sal Holden. That is one of the best ways that people can go to grab heaps of different free resources and downloads and freebies and all sorts of things there. And I also have my website, which is abundantheartcoaching.com. So they're the best two places. And you can grab my books on Amazon as well. So they're available on, yeah, Amazon as well as on my website as well. So.
Wonderful. Such a pleasure having you on today.
Yes, really great.
It's been
Really great.
lovely chatting with you both. I just, my heart is so full. I love these conversations.
Uh, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in and spending the last hour with us. We'll see you all next week. Kisses, hugs, lots of hugs.
Bye.
We'll see you then.